Hello vinyl community, this is Graham Allen coming to you from North London to talk about some German symphonic progressive rock that I picked up last couple of weeks, and has been some absolutely favourite listening over the last few weeks. This kind of all started from a trip to Amsterdam, which I've mentioned in a previous video, where I picked up another very obscure, quite rare German progressive rock trio called Trilogy. Picked up all their albums, and it got me searching for symphonic progressive rock from Germany. And I stumbled really across a band called Trilogy, who are quite exceptional, particularly their first album and their second album, which I'll mention. So first of all, Trilogy, progressive rock. People will know this album. Emerson, Lake and Palmer, a 1972 album called Trilogy, one of their most loved and respected albums, a great varied album, but really established them in 1972 as a huge act on the world stage and live. Okay, so Trilogy, the German band. This is their album called Here It Is, which is their debut album, and this was released in 1979 on the Kane label, and it's got 6 tracks. And this is classic keyboard dominated symphonic progressive rock. So symphonic, I guess, hints at sort of almost classical structures to the music, hence the word symphonic, rather than kind of blues based sensibilities, which people will know about progressive rock. But certain elements of progressive rock lend themselves much more to a sort of symphonic style, which is usually keyboard dominated, and that is very much Trilogy. So there's the back of the album, and this is on the Kane label, which you can probably just see there. Really nice label, I've never seen it before. And one of the things I was intrigued about, and just doing a little bit of reading about the band, I have actually managed to get in touch with a band member, and intriguingly, I don't think they chose the cover, which I'm not surprised about. It's a bit of a bizarre cover. It's a sort of a mannequin. It looks like an elderly woman who's been hooded and put on a chair, and I'm not sure if the chair is supposed to be knocked over, but it's a bit of a brutal image. It doesn't go with the music at all, and in fact they re-released this on CD with a cover which actually reminds me a bit of Fragile by Yes, with a kind of a globe earth, which is kind of in the style almost of Roger Dean and the Fragile cover, which is much more sort of appropriate for the kind of music. And sometimes you wonder whether this kind of album cover had an effect on sales of an album like this. So funny enough, I just mentioned this because it arrived, it was off Discogs, and it kind of arrived like this, and I've been putting the cover in the sleeve and kind of leaving the record shop insert, the little postcard, and even the stickers, the price stickers, the barcodes on there, just to cover up the album cover, because it's not very appealing. But it's a great album, dominated by Hammond and wonderful Moog playing as well. There's some really good chunky bass, which sounds like a Rickenbacker. A lot of keyboards, as I mentioned, and there is some guitar on there. And the drumming, very much style of the day, quite complex, and it sounds like a large multi-tomed kit. So you get a lot of busy runs around the concert toms, which puts this very much in the style of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, of course. So that's 1979 Trilogy, Here It Is, and that for me is some of my favourite listening of the year. It's been a terrific album. They then took a break. I'm not quite sure why, but quite a long break. and produced this album in 1984 called Trilogy. Called Nachtlichter, which is Nightlights. And I really like the cover. Very minimalist, very kind of 1980s, and perhaps unsurprisingly, because of the year and the time, they switched really from symphonic prog to sort of synth pop, synth rock, really. So this is much more kind of upbeat. There's vocals on here on some of the tracks. The keyboard sounds are quite different. You've got a lot more polysynth sounds from the early 80s. There is some Moog on here, but the drumming is kind of more robotic in style, more machine-like. You haven't got the busy runs around the tom-toms. I suppose in a way I much prefer the first album, but this is interesting and perhaps inevitable given the year 1984. And this is on ETA Records, Nachtlichter. Just show you the back cover here. Really nice cover, got some beautiful condition off Discogs. And there's the band. Okay, we've got the two keyboard players, additional vocals and guitar and drums. Recorded in West Germany. Now, it just got me thinking about the changes, of course, in bands, particularly progressive rock bands, going from sort of mid to late 70s and then into the 80s. Some obvious candidates, people like Genesis. But the band that immediately popped into my head, and it's one of the bands, it was the first band I ever saw live at Lancaster University in 1979, was this band called After the Fire. And I'd heard this album, which is a bit of a prog masterpiece called Signs of Change. This was released in 1978, so just the other side of the peak years of prog. And this really is fantastic symphonic prog rock with Peter Banks playing Hammond, Mini Moog, Krumar, Multiman and piano. Just a great album. You can get it quite easily now. It's been released on CD, but at the time it was pretty rare. It's on Roadrunner Records, which is quite a rare label. I'll just show you that. Sorry, Rapid Records, not Roadrunner Records, it's Rapid Records. And that's a bit of a classic, 1978. But they signed to CBS and released this album. It had a single called One Rule for You, One Rule for Me, and also Laser Love. And they turned pretty much fully sort of almost like post-punk new wave synth pop. It's a good album. I really like some of the keyboard playing on this, and it's got some proggy overtones to it. There's Pete Memory Banks, as he's called, Andy Piercy, the main vocalist and bass player, one of the writers. This is a really good album on CBS. They did a number of albums before they folded, but it's a similar change. So they go from full-on prog, symphonic prog, to sort of new wave, post-new wave almost, synth pop with some prog elements. So that's it. So Trilogy, the band, you can find them on Spotify and also on YouTube. But if people are into sort of quite obscure German symphonic prog rock, then I highly recommend Trilogy. And thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Bye bye.